If I needed to lose 10 pounds in the next 60, 90 days, in this particular case, maybe 10 pounds before the holidays, these are a few things that I would do. Now, you could use all 11 of these tactics, or you could pick ones that really align with you personally and work well for you. The cool thing is this would work whether it's before the holidays or before summer, whatever. Anytime you just need to have more flexibility with your diet, but you still want to drop 10 pounds. So this is like not crazy, hard, fast, get shredded rules. This is, I need to drop 10 pounds so that I look good, or I need to look better for the family, or whatever, right? The first thing that I would do is I would pregame each meal with a little bit of protein, maybe a protein powder even, maybe a half a scoop of protein powder. I've done this for a really long time. First of all, protein is the most satiating macronutrient that there is, so you're going to literally be less hungry. So if you're going into a dinner with some family, or you're going out to dinner, or you know you're going to be around food that's tempting, simply pre-gaming with protein is an utter game changer. Not to mention it makes it so that you don't have to exude as much willpower to stay away from temptation. Plus, you're also just flat out more satiated, so you'll probably eat less. The next one is much more tactical and a little more specific. Personally, I would start my day off with 3 whole eggs and 3 whites. Normally, I'm all about the eggs, and I will eat the whole egg. I eat a lot of eggs. But if I'm trying to trim things back, the egg whites provide a lot of satiety. Obviously, the protein is the most satiating part. The yolk is hugely beneficial and has most of the nutritional value, but I'd say above 3 eggs, you're not getting yourself a lot more, right? You've got a lot of fat-soluble vitamins in there, all these great nutrients, sure, but I don't think you're getting more out of like 6 eggs instead of just calories that you would out of like 3. I mean, yes, you literally are, but in terms of what you're gonna actually utilize, if satiety and just getting enough calories in isn't necessarily the goal and you're trying to trim back a little bit, simply going to a 3 whole egg plus 3 white mechanism is perfect. Like, that's a great way to reduce those calories but still feel satiated and get a good volume of food in the morning. That is my trim down egg breakfast anytime I feel like I need to slim down or drop a couple of pounds. It works extremely, extremely well. Number 3 is more of a timing thing. And I'm not talking about fasting here. I'm talking about having breakfast a little bit later and then actually just skipping lunch. Now, this doesn't have to be something that you do all the time, okay? This is something that a lot of cultures do, actually. They end up kind of having lunch-ish breakfast, and it's a bigger meal, and then they end up having a big dinner in their cases in like a lot of European regions, but I don't necessarily think that's what you have to do. I just feel like instead of waking up, rolling out of bed, and having breakfast, maybe instead of actually intermittent fasting and going till 12 or 1 p.m., you meet in the middle. You just say, you know what, I'm just gonna delay breakfast until like 10, 11 a.m. and just kind of have a meal then, and then just not really eat until dinner. You're giving yourself these very clear defined gaps in which glucagon can elevate, hormone-sensitive lipase can elevate, you can burn more fat, you can have more lipolysis, but you're also just eliminating a flat-out meal. So in a very easy way, you're allowing yourself to just reduce those calories. But I always exercise caution with extreme caloric restriction because your basal metabolic rate is going to decrease too. So we want to keep calories high enough. So in this case, you have a bigger breakfast. You have those 3 eggs, those 3 whites, maybe a little bit of something else, maybe some sourdough, I don't know, something that you feel really works for you to satisfy that emotional itch, but also keep you satiated. And then you just maybe cruise on through to a relatively early dinner around 5 or 6 p.m. It's one of the easiest things that you can do from a lifestyle perspective that changes everything. The next thing that I would do, and this is one that works any time of year, and it's actually what works for a lot of people in Hollywood. I know people have their, I work with a lot of people down in Southern California in the Hollywood sphere, and this is a common thing for them. It's floated around the industry for a long time, and as much as you might have things to say about Hollywood, it does work for them. It's called the 5-2 approach, and it's not 5-2 like intermittent fasting approach. It's more 5-2 what is called intermittent caloric restriction. So intermittent caloric restriction is where you eat normally for 5 days, but 2 days out of the week you aggressively calorically restrict, or you could fast, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that this keeps basal metabolic rate really, really high because you're going 5 days out of the week eating normally and then you're just having most of your caloric restriction happen 2 days out of the week. So people generally will go, I'm gonna eat normal throughout the week, and then on the weekend, when I'm busy and I'm occupied with the kids and the family, I'm gonna only eat like 500 calories or 1,000 calories. And it's hard, but you can exude that willpower for a day or two and then go back to relatively normal eating patterns, as long as you don't compensate during the week. Okay, so that's the big caveat. So if you restrict calories by 2,000 calories or so each day on Saturday and Sunday, that's a 4,000 calorie deficit. That's more than a pound a week. So in 10 weeks, you would lose 10 pounds without hardly affecting your metabolic rate at all. It is hugely, hugely beneficial. Now, the next thing that I would do, and this is going to come as a weird surprise for people because there's some literature that supports this. In fact, there was a new study that just came out in August of 2024 that demonstrated that the nutrient deficiencies that we have throughout the world, let alone the US, are much more than we thought. For example, we are so deficient in vitamin E. We are very deficient in lots of other minerals, right? So we have problems here. And nutrient deficiencies, when you think about it, now I don't have literal literature to back this part up, but if you are deficient in a nutrient, wouldn't it make sense that your body would probably send some kind of signal to eat to try to get that nutrient? So if you're nutrient deprived or deficient, I would guess, make a very educated guess, that your body would start to crave things and you'd start to crave food, right? So I think that getting adequate nutrients in is important, and sometimes that's via a multivitamin. Sometimes it's via leafy greens. Obviously, with leafy greens, you're going to get the fiber, and you're going to get the roughage, the satiety, you're going to get polyphenols, you're going to get this, you're going to get that from fruit too. That's important. But I have found that literally just making sure my nutrients are where I need them, whether it's through a multivitamin or full spectrum types of veggies and greens, it makes a difference on my appetite. So say what you want. There's all kinds of things you could say, oxalates, phytic acid, this, that, but bottom line is that if there is some nutrient that isn't getting taken in, it could be problematic. Now, full disclosure, you could also do this with ground beef or something. Like beef is a great source of B vitamins, of iron, heme iron. It's got a lot of good things to it. But there's also some things that might be good to get just from a veggie source or a multivitamin. I also put a link down below. There's an interesting new multi. Okay, it's a multivitamin gummy that also has creatine in it. So it's made from Create, the people that make the creatine gummies, has a low dose of daily creatine in it, which will help brain energy, help you overall feel more energetic. It also has multivitamin components, so it has nutrients that you're looking for, that there are common deficiencies in, so hugely important there. It also has a low dose of greens in it. Now, it's not designed to replace your greens, but it's designed to get you some of that benefit too that you might be missing out if you don't quite eat enough vegetables. But then it also has adaptogenic mushrooms in it, which can help with appetite, can help with energy, can potentially help with mood regulation. And it's from the same people that have created that really awesome 1.5 gram creatine gummy that I talk about all the time. I highly recommend you check it out. Plus, it's something sweet, and it might just give you that little bit of satisfaction you're looking for if you're trying to, I don't know, deplete or deprive yourself a tiny bit. I highly recommend it. That's also a 50% off discount link down below. It's that link down below in the top line of the description, 50% off your first order with these Create gummies. The next thing I'd do is I would do random acts of protein-sparing modified fasting. You watch my videos enough, you hear me talk about this, so I'll spare you the gory details on it. But essentially, protein-sparing modified fasting looks like this. Lean meat, lean dairy, lean protein, very low fat, very low carb. Very low fat, practically zero carb. We're talking random, sporadic bouts of this. I don't like doing it on a schedule too much because it works so well that it's moderately addicting. It works so well and the results are so fast that it's easy to overdo it. So I throw protein-sparing modified fasting in randomly. Okay, now I'm also a believer that sometimes a thought or an idea comes into our brain before it ever bubbles to our consciousness, so maybe it's preconceived, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, I might wake up one day and say, I am only going to eat lean chicken breast and lean deli meat today, and that's it. That way I'm preserving muscle mass, I'm still having muscle protein synthesis, but my calories are aggressively low, I'm not going to waste muscle. And yeah, it might be hard to get through that day, but you'll find that protein-sparing modified fasting, when done randomly, is a great tool to melt some fat. You see all kinds of stuff. You see like Ted Naiman talking about it. He's one of the big guys that really talks about it. I gotta have him on the channel soon. Point is, it works. So do that randomly, no more than twice a week. Another thing that I would do is I would have ground or freshly ground flax seeds, ideally with breakfast. Interestingly enough, flax seeds get a bad rap because they have phytoestrogens in them, and that could be construed as an estrogenic food. Now, the interesting thing is most of the literature suggests that the phytoestrogens that are in flax seeds actually bind to the estrogen receptors, thereby blocking actual estrogen from hitting the receptor, and consequently potentially lowering estrogen. So this means that it could have a counter effect to what people think, but that's not even why I bother with flax. Flax is one of the most satiating foods I've ever had, and it helps with specific strains of gut bacteria that may help with your appetite, may help with blood sugar regulation, and may even help with fatty acid oxidation. So 1 to 2 tablespoons of freshly ground flax seeds mixed with some water, mixed in yogurt or something with breakfast. You can even mix them with eggs and you don't even notice it. But the point is, you have to try to get them in a whole seed form and then freshly grind them so they don't oxidize. The next thing that I would do, which is such a simple one, very simple, and it may be something you've already done. People don't realize how many calories are in regular ground beef compared to like 93% ground beef. If you looked at 80% ground beef versus 93% ground beef, in a serving you'd be looking well over 100 calorie difference just in terms of the fat content. What I would recommend is, at least for the time being, switch to a lean ground beef. You don't have to do it permanently, but this is huge. I always kind of reference a ribeye, for example. You could take 2 ribeyes, and the difference in fat content between those 2 ribeyes could be so different without it even looking that different. With ground beef, it's the similar kind of thing, except the cool thing with ground beef is that you can look at the fat percentage, whereas with like a ribeye or a steak, you can't. So if you switch over to ground beef, you can be more controlled and go with a leaner option. It's a quick way to trim calories and to not overdo the fats in one sitting. Another thing that's extremely important, switch to more micro workouts. Now you could still do your bigger workout in the morning or whenever you do it, but I'm telling you, dropping and doing 30 push-ups or dropping and doing 15 sit-ups or 5 pull-ups randomly throughout the day is probably metabolically one of the best things you can do for your muscle tissue. Constant stimulus, reminding the body that the muscle is relevant and important, thereby it should stay and not be wasted. Plus, it's keeping the metabolic rate just elevated. Most of the evidence now suggests that being sedentary is worse than smoking. Being sedentary is worse than skipping a workout. It's about being moving as much as you can. Trust me when I say this will work, and it seems to work, and I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, independent of calories in a lot of cases. The next thing is, cheat a little bit every day. The evidence is clear. If you have a cheat meal once a week, it is monumentally easier to overeat and overconsume that day and offset your entire week than it is to just have a half a cookie or a cookie a day. That cheat meal is going to come in at a time when your metabolic rate is lower, which means any additional calories are going to mess you up even more. Trust me when I say a wee bit of flexibility each day is better, and it works in a more sustainable fashion, and it keeps you satisfied up here so you don't need to have a major cheat meal at the end of the week. The last thing that I will leave you with is something that I have learned in the last couple of years that I wish I knew earlier. It would have preserved my body, it would have made it so I had less injuries, and I probably would have had more emotional satisfaction out of my life. I use vigorous workouts as my stimulus because vigorous workouts are good for stimulating change and growth and resilience. But that is the catalyst. Most of the benefit for the fat loss, I promise you, is going to come in through regular movement and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I promise you that. Guarantee it. If you spend a little less time focusing on blasting yourself with a workout and a lot more time on just moving throughout the day, you will thank me. Your body will change. Mine has. I like how I look better. I don't feel inflamed. I don't feel like I hurt. I don't feel like I have a voracious appetite all day. I feel like this is just doing what it needs to do. I'm getting my stimulus and then I'm moving throughout the day. I'm exerting vigorous force and getting stronger and building my VO2 max, but then I'm just having the energy to move throughout the day, play with my kids, do things, make my wife happy, keep the house clean, work, provide, protect, do the things that I need to do because I have energy to do so. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I will see you tomorrow.